Love on a quid pro quo basis. To my dear wife, now that I have reached the age of 70, I have realized that I don't want to spend the rest of my life in celibacy. In addition, I am tired of the humiliation and depression I have faced over the past few years. Anyone else reading this might assume that I was set up with a cuckold or somehow misbehaved in our marriage. But as far as I know, you have been faithful for all 45 years of our marriage. I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't been faithful, since you were married when we started dating. But if you did cheat on me, you hid it well. And, what surprised me the most, I was faithful too. There were opportunities and women who made it clear they were interested, but I never lowered myself or even came close. Perhaps that's why I find the whole thing so humiliating. And if that makes you uncomfortable, let's remember our love story. We fooled around when you were still married and after the divorce. Eventually, we fell in love and got married. We made love often and made 2 kids before things went south. We aborted our 3rd child first. On your idea, you said you couldn't handle 3 children. When I objected, you said it was your body, and you were doing all the work with the kids, and I basically had nothing to say about it. I should have argued more, but I didn't. And like I said, we had an abortion. I accept my share of the blame, but I've always regretted not protecting our child. As I said, we made love often, daily before the babies came and several times a week after. Then, one night in bed, when I tried to start cuddling, you said, no. You didn't think I wasn't helping enough with the kids, around the house, etc. Paying the bills wasn't enough. I took it to mean that sex was now on a quid pro quo basis. I was familiar with this. Overseas, in the military, I learned that this was how all cheating women operated. Usually they did it for money, but since your money was your money and my money was our money, I was effectively paying you with your money, so favors were our currency. I don't know what I was doing differently. I assumed that if we had sex, you felt you were paid. That's when I first considered divorce, but decided I would have to wait until the kids were out of the house. That was years away. But I felt I had to endure and wait. Giving up love-making and moving on to a freelance life removed any responsibility for our love. From then on, my primary concern was for myself. This may have contributed to you increasingly losing interest in sex, but in retrospect, I think you were already losing interest. It seems like you almost always experienced pleasure, but after the abortion, something was missing, and you were increasingly hard to get interested in fooling around. And that's before you changed our sexual relationship. The kids were grown and had their own lives, but our lives weren't bad, and we had achieved a good lifestyle. I was content and didn't seek a divorce. Everything was good until it got bad. I think you finally lost interest in sex. I suspected you became disinterested when you gained weight after the abortion and made no effort to lose it. I think that was your first attempt to talk me out of it. Along with gaining weight, you started telling me you didn't like your breasts being touched, and started going to bed with your knees pulled up so I couldn't fondle anything but your back, arms, or stomach. Most of the time, massaging your body put you to sleep, or at least pretended to be asleep, before anything approaching sexual pleasure was achieved. Even when we achieved any kind of caressing, sex could still slip away. You had a nasty habit, and not a good one, if you were enjoying the caresses, rolled over and said, "I'm going to fall asleep now. I thought about forcing you to have sex, but that's beyond me." I considered divorce again, but you didn't pull that stunt very often, and life was comfortable enough to put up with it. I had to just pass out. Then it got worse. You developed an odor, an acrid, penetrating odor, from your body. When we had sex, just the smell of it was enough to make me give up making love. I thought that perhaps there were pheromones in nature that, instead of attracting the male to the female, repelled him. I tried to research this issue but never found anything definitive. For a long time, I didn't talk to you about it because I didn't want to embarrass you, and frankly, I couldn't believe you couldn't smell it yourself. I hoped it would go away, that it was temporary, and put up with all the humiliation that accompanies the loss of attraction during sex. I continued to abuse myself. Sometimes I succeeded, but more and more often I lost attraction during sex. The odor became so strong that I had to sleep facing you because any shift in the blanket would blow the odor in my face. Sex in our bed began to resemble sex in a sewage treatment plant, and dead, rotting animals added to the aroma. After months of humiliating incidents, I finally broke down and told you about the odor. After a visit to the gynecologist, you told me that your gynecologist said there was no odor. When I told you that there was, and that your doctor must not be seeing your nose, you refused to do anything about it. You wouldn't see any other doctors or even go for a syringe. You basically told me, go away. If there is an odor, it's your problem. I think you were perfectly fine with whatever was keeping us from having sex. I thought a lot about divorce, even explored my options in California. But then you got breast cancer, and you needed my support. Thankfully, a lumpectomy and a year of radiation therapy kept you alive. But your illness made the thought of divorce unacceptable for several years. When I still insisted on sex, you decided that we would only do it in the pre-pregnancy position, and your hips hurt. Now the weight you had gained was working in your favor. Then the odor would become overpowering, and I would begin to wonder why I was subjecting myself to humiliation over and over again. From that day on, I swore I would never have sex with you again. As time went on, however, I got better and better at suppressing it, and the attraction became less and less frequent as I convinced my subconscious that you weren't attractive. And you never questioned the fact that we weren't in a relationship. You seemed perfectly happy that we weren't. The only acceptable outlet for me was self-satisfaction. I think I had forgotten what sex was supposed to be like. Which brings me back to the beginning of this letter. At the age of 70, I realized that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life without sex, and needed to consider my options. So I went to the doctor. He saw nothing wrong with it and prescribed sildenafil. So far, I've let you as a woman make most of the decisions in our sex life, so I'm going to let you choose whichever option you prefer. Option 1, you and I have sex when and how I want. And nothing is off limits. You'll find it humiliating. Well, I've been humiliated and you didn't care. I might go for exhibitionism instead and ask you to show yourself in public. But it's not just between us. I'm assuming my humiliation is a private matter between us. Though it wouldn't surprise me to learn that you've discussed it with all your friends and family. But I give you the benefit of the doubt. Option 2. If you choose not to have sex, you give me permission to have sex with other people. You will, of course, have the same privileges. If you don't choose option 1, you default to option 2, either in conjunction with option 3 or by itself. Option 3, divorce, which would open up option 2 as well. Personally, I think our lifestyle would have been better if we had stayed married, but as always, you have a choice. Sure, you can choose option 2 and then decide you'd rather go with option 3, so the balloons are at your disposal and they are most likely blue. I'll give you a week to make your choice, after which we'll move on to option 2. I'll probably start with your friends that I've found interesting over the years. Love. Your planning and soon-to-be loving husband. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.